The key to success on the field and in your backyard is a comprehensive game plan. So if you're building a fence or a deck this year, trust a Turkstra coach to design, quote, or order the right materials for your project. Visit a Turkstra Lumber near you to learn more.
From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker.
Welcome to the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker. The Ticats coming off a loss this past Sunday. 32-14 was the final in Toronto, and now getting ready for Montreal at home this Friday, the 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Coach, thanks for taking the time to chat. It's a short week, and you guys are back onto the field right away. You've had a full day now since the loss in Toronto. What's stuck in your mind as sort of the most frustrating part of that loss?
I would just say the combination of things. It wasn't one thing. It was a combination. I think we got better than from week one in a few certain areas, and in certain areas we didn't, right? So at the end of the day, it's a team loss. We've kind of took a deep dive and addressed some of the challenges that we saw. And really it's about fast forwarding in the most literal sense on to Montreal.
Yeah, very fast. Short 5-day week here, and sort of a truncated practice week. How do you handle that less time to prepare for this upcoming Montreal game?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's different every year with your football teams. It's, for us, we're going to have to be that interesting combination between being fresh, which is going to be hard to be in a 5-day turnaround as it is, and also prepared. So there is going to be a little bit of, we didn't run down yesterday. We did watch the film, but the players need some time mentally and physically to get away. And then we'll go out and do a crunched condensed version of day 1 and 2, and also shorten it, right? So, it's not like we're going to go out there and grind them for that time, because ultimately we're going to kick the ball off on Friday. So, I think we have a nice plan of how we're going to manage that, and now we're just executing it.
We talked last week after week 1. You can look back at a game, at a loss certainly, and kind of identify those plays that went wrong. And you said you can kind of analyze and try to understand what's the likelihood of those things happening again. How do you view some of the negatives in Toronto as far as their likelihood of continuing, or how easy they will be to change?
Well, I think one of the cool things that we do is we address things as growth opportunities and learning experiences, versus putting the negative spin on it. Specifically, I'd say I think the game, possibly could have been different. Well, I know it would have been different. I'm not speaking to the outcome. If we, when you're down there knocking at the door, you got to go in and at least come away with 3. And that was unfortunate. And then we were, at the door again at the fringe, and, we turned the ball over again. And those right there not only are momentum swings, plus there was a little bit of a win game. They've got a strong kicker and punter. It played a factor in it. And then, we'd like to take the ball away too, as neutralizers, right? Like those type of things. So, penalties came down from week 1, which we knew would, and we expected to happen. However, the ones that we did have, there was a couple timely ones where we were off the field, and, we didn't put the team first. Let's just say that.
Yeah, the first touchdown drive from Toronto, those 2 penalties against Hamilton sort of kept, it's so frustrating because it's the defense does their job in a sense. They did what they had to do. They were off the field, like you said, and twice we saw in that game just penalties keep the thing going. But you look at the end, you had half the penalties that you had in Winnipeg. In fact, you had less than Toronto in the game. Is there anything you can coach on? I mean, when it comes with that, you kind of did what you needed to do as far as totally chopping that in half, but just the effect that they had was still, present there. Was still, you could still feel it watching the game.
Yeah, you point it out, and you don't dwell on it. You don't brush it under the rug. Luke, you address the elephant in the room, and you address the challenges hard. You know that people aren't out there trying to mess up. They want to win the game, but there's consequences. for poor decision making in the heat of the moment. And they need to know that it affects more than the individual. This is the ultimate team sport, and that part's extremely frustrating. But what you're looking for is patterns of behavior that aren't repeated. And if they are, then as we say, then we're going to need people's seat, because there's so much riding on it and everybody's dependent upon it. And that's what's beautiful about this game, is that an individual can make a great decision that never shows up in the box score, or nobody but mom and dad or your spouse see, and it makes all the difference in the game.
Those turnovers you addressed there, it's the hardest position in sports to play. Widely agreed upon. Quarterback is the hardest position in sports, and you've got a really good one with the Ticats. A couple costly turnovers earlier in the season. Specific to Bo Levi Mitchell, a guy who's got so much experience in this league, what do you as a head coach say to him about the turnover issues early in this season?
You just address it. There's no sugarcoating it. We either got to run it or throw it away. There's no soft landing. There's no, he's a pro. He's the first one that's going to take ownership of it. And when you have a player like that and a person like that, you can grow from that. And so he'll be the first to tell you he would, he's not going to make those type of mistakes again. You don't dwell on it, but he wants to be coached.
Before the game, Coach Lawrence Woods, unfortunately unable to make it to the game day roster. Can you speak to how late in the week that was, the burden that puts on the team, and how you handle something like that?
Yeah, it was the day before the game. The same thing that we had learned about Seth Small, and those are things that we kind of pride ourselves around here for being prepared, and those are things you can't prepare for, except, this, Luke, this is adversity. Let's just say that. And it's always about the response to it. And so how do you do it? You take it in, you acknowledge it, you don't act like it didn't happen, and then you move on. And there's so many other players that are there in the room and the game, and as we say, the ball's going to be kicked off regardless. So let's embrace this. It's really what it is.
Mm-hmm. Gallimore, pretty impressive, from the booth, from a guy who probably didn't expect to be taking all the returns as they prepped for the week. But are you pleased with how he performed on that short notice?
Yeah, I thought he did some things really well. First and foremost, your job is to get the ball back to the offense, and we're always trying to get one first down. You're trying that the offense doesn't have to get. So you start with 10 yards. I think he had a near 40-yard kickoff return, which we kind of expected to get, because they kind of outkicked their coverage in the most literal sense. Beatty's got a huge leg on kickoff, so you should be able to get a little bit better return against Toronto. And then, as the punt return, I think the first and foremost thing is you always you got to catch it. You got to catch the ball and finish with the football. And I thought he did a great job of that. And there's Luke, you've been back there. There's a feel you got to have. It's not always about your speed. It's about setting up your blocks and those things. And you only get that from experience. Right? It's one thing that I've learned, and I think the running backs always echo this type of thing. And, to the fan, they might not understand this completely. And some coaches don't either. But I remember running backs always saying, they'll take an outside zone up here and try to run it like they would in the States or in the NCAA, meaning on the smaller field. And what happens is you get to the numbers, and then there's another, near 15 yards, and then people run you down. So, as a rule of thumb, if you don't cut it up by then, because you're dealing with fast, quote unquote, linebackers, the game's just a little different. And so what I'm saying is it's kind of the same thing for the returner. You think that because there's this big field, you're just going to keep running. And then once you get out there, you're going to be able to turn the corner and just go. And sometimes that's the case, but I think you're going to see more returns more time than not, where you're going to cut it up in first, and then you may widen it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good perspective. In that Toronto game, couple good catches. It did at times, short of those turnovers at the end of those drives, but it seemed like the timing and connection. Bo Levi Mitchell and his receivers looked better, certainly than week one. You had some really great defense, specifically in the third quarter and the pass game in the second half in general. How about some other positives? What are you praising the team for? What are some things that maybe your average listener or watcher of that game wouldn't have noticed that the Ticats did well?
Wow. Well, I think the biggest proof isn't, I think sometimes people think, in the media and everything, they always want to say, well, what did you tell your team at halftime? What did you tell them after the game? What is your messaging this week? And most of the time I keep that between, us and us. I think the most powerful testimony sometimes is in the film. And so when you talk about pulling positives, what I did was I pulled clips and showed them, what the standard for 2023 was. And that's a standard they set. We set the expectations. This is what we expect you to do. But until we catch you doing it right, it's hard because then it's just words. So there's actual tangible examples of making a play, a one-handed catch where the ball maybe was a little too far. A guy running through his shadow, as you would know, meaning catching the ball and turning right up field on a key 3rd and 2 to make sure we got it. Ball security was an issue in week one, and you can see JB or Butler capping the ball and iron crossing it and having a hard hold on it. These are things that you get encouraged about that don't show up. At the end of the day, I completely understand that it's a zero-sum game. It's about winning. And all I can say is those types of things, you see improvement and it keeps you going and you're encouraged. So you highlight those things. This is where we were week one. This is how we grew. What the bottom line is, you want to learn off of wins as you do off of defeats. And so, the messaging were the words, repeating all that right now, it might be fun, but it doesn't resonate to the team the same way that the proof in the film actually does.
Matt Shiltz, coach. What do you do about Matt Shiltz? I mean, just kind of unbelievable how he came in the fourth quarter. What do you say about Matt?
That's Matt. That's why you go out and get a backup quarterback like him, because he's capable of those type of things. And regardless of the time of game, regardless of the game plan for him, any of those things, there's no moment that's too big for him. But yet he's willing to do all the little things when he's not the person. He's the ultimate teammate. He's supportive. And, I don't want to do him a disservice, but, to say that I was surprised with the poise he showed and he's been in the offense longer. Mm-hmm. And so that's a positive. So I can't say enough great things about the person, and that's why we worked so hard and to get him back here. And I think that was evident because other teams saw him as their backup also too.
A lot of backup quarterbacks would probably say of themselves that they're preparing like they're going to start every week. It's probably a description used for backups pretty frequently, but it's the proof's in the pudding with Matt Shiltz. What does he do different than you've seen other backups do? Like, why is he so prepared? Does he actually have different habits and routines throughout the week to get that ready?
I think some of it is just in his presence, Luke. It's not always in what sure. Is he in the building early? Absolutely. Is he always looking for the pictures? Absolutely. Does he have a good attitude out on the field when he's not getting reps? Absolutely. But then there's that feeling, right? And there's that, even when I coached you, there was stuff I didn't know, right? It's about the locker room and how they perceive you, less about what the coaches perceive. And so, you saw that in Jeremiah when he prepared. And there's just a feeling, what I mean, of just a calm confidence type of thing. Even Dane prepared extremely, extremely hard. I remember watching Zach Caleros in Toronto, Trevor Harris in Toronto, when we had Ricky Ray, when I coached the DBs in Toronto. And you say, what is it about him? There's just a natural, authentic professionalism about him that that protected and the circumstances are right, that these are the type of people that are going to have the best opportunity to be high achievers.
We've talked about turnovers, or I should say the giveaways, a lot. I come from an offensive perspective and you from a defensive perspective. And so turnovers we see differently. And in the takeaways, you mentioned briefly at the start of this show, you know, you don't want to forget about that side of the ratio as well. How are you coaching and talking about that knack for a defense to just learn to be stealing the football away? You know, what is the conversation like for that part of the ratio? Again,
The conversation is just the start of it. You got to start seeing it in practice, right? Mm-hmm. Like getting your hands on footballs, balls that, some are completely built for knockdowns, and then there's some where it's like, no, that's an average play. Let's make a great play, or that's a good play. Let's make a great play. Like we need to intercept that ball, mm-hmm. or that's a fumble opportunity that you got to, you know how we do it, Luke. Like no loose balls on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. So we're always pressing and picking them up or scooping them. Tackle turnover circuit, hatchets. So we're always working on it so that it's not new in the game. When the opportunity presents itself, you get it. And so, and then you just have to have a belief and a mindset that you can do it, and that you're freed up to make those plays. It's definitely different on offense, where you remember when I coached you, like even when we were doing mesh drill, I would yell out to you, it's 3rd and 5. Like I'm trying to add an element that there's no bad footballs. The only thing that's terrible right now is that we don't catch it and get this 5 yards. Mm-hmm. And so you're always trying to put them in situations that show up in the game. It's the same reason you echo down and distance in practice and all that, but I don't want to get too technical, but there's all these things behind the scenes that sometimes take growth. It's with all due respect, you were a highly intelligent player you were a self-starter and those type of things. And I always use you as an example because it's cleaner, right? And so when I was coaching you or preparing you, it was more about, challenge you in other areas, get the last shove. Can you get somebody else to your level of knowledge? That's going to help our team get better. And some people aren't self-starters, where you got to consistently challenge them, all the time. So messaging is different. You kind of got to find out what each player does well, put them in those situations to continue to get well, and then also encourage them to work on their weaknesses.
That's great. Coach, you've got a unique challenge at the start of this season that maybe has gone unknown by a lot, but you've got first game of the year against Winnipeg. Of course, it's game 1, so nobody has film. But then you go on the second game of the season, and Toronto is coming off a bye week, so you still have no film on Toronto. Now we go to the third game of the season, and it's Montreal, who also has had a bye week. And so, again, you've got a limited collection of film from this season. First of all, what the heck? Second of all, what do you do? Or, I mean, I know it's an uncontrollable factor, but how is it 3 weeks in a row you're preparing for a team that you have very little, sample size of?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've known it's been on the schedule, meaning, we're in Montreal and then 7 days later we're actually in Winnipeg with a travel day, and you're releasing people and that it's on the schedule. So we embrace that and we're excited for it. And then you go through it and it's different because it's not, you don't envision who's hurt, how you're shuffling the roster, the first time we're getting on a plane, the dress code, yada, yada. That's just stuff that, the general fan wouldn't know, right? And it's awesome. It's just you can't prepare for things that you haven't done in those situations. And then, not having film is definitely tough, but everybody starts the season that way. You don't really know what the team's going to do. Them coming off a bye, that's just what it is. They're going to kick the ball off anyway. And then, Montreal coming off a bye this week, and we only have one game of film on them. It's interesting. It's a challenge, and I just feel like we're built for this. There's no back down. It's on the schedule. We adjust, and then as you're going through it, you learn about yourself and you learn about your football team and your staff.
Montreal, of course, has the week 1 win against Ottawa, an East opponent. What can you tell us? What do you expect from this Montreal team?
Yeah, I mean, they're, obviously they have a different play caller in Jason, who's, done very well and is highly competitive. I know Jay real well, and I know that they'll be prepared to play. I feel like, as far as the special teams, as new as he may be, there's still a lot of continuity on that football team, with their D coordinator, with Noel being back, and then with Archambault with special teams. So I feel like they're a confident group that's, they're a physical football team. We're going to have our hands full, but I could say that every week. I feel like every team is going to be highly competitive. Everybody's, after the same thing. So this is going to prove a great challenge for us, and, we're looking to get better and obviously come out with the win.
Well, very good. In a short week, we'll let you get back to it. The Coach O Show with Luke Tasker is presented by Turkstra Lumber. Check out the project coaches at Turkstra Lumber. They can help with every part of your home renovation, from designing a deck to ordering a new front door. Learn more at TurkstraLumber.com. Coach, best of luck day 1/2, short week. Looking forward to this game at Tim Hortons Field on Friday.
Me too. Thanks, Luke. See you next week.
Another episode of the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker is in the books. Let us know your thoughts. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Coach O and Luke are back next week to discuss the latest from the locker room. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.